Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to another video. Today I want to talk about two cameras, the GH5 and the FX30. Both of these are great cameras. Let me start off by saying that because I made another video about saying I was a little disappointed with the FX30 and people did not like me throwing shade on the FX30. Not trying to say it's a bad camera, I just wish it did a little bit more. And I think the reason I feel that way is because the GH5 is so good. And that's what I was coming from. So I want to talk about the highlights and lowlights of both these cameras and just tell a little bit of my story on each. We'll start with the GH5. This is a camera that can pretty much do anything. That's what I love about it. I didn't know that when I bought it. I was just doing side-by-side video comparisons. It was a little disappointing sometimes, but for the most part, I was like, this thing looks pretty good, but I didn't realize how many pro features this thing has. Really, the most important one is 10-bit color. I didn't know how important that was. 10-bit color and log. That's what got me into the whole world of color grading and subsequently lighting. If you know that your camera can pretty much shoot any scene, then you learn a lot more about lighting, which is way more important than the camera you're using. Or lenses, which is also, I would argue, more important than the camera you're using. And that was something I couldn't learn until I started using 10-bit color. So I didn't realize that when I bought it, but that's one of the best features that this camera has. This can do anything. Like, this can do real estate, this can do wedding videography, this can do commercials, you can make a movie on this. This thing is really cool. Another side tangent thing that I love about this camera is that it also does the 4:3 aspect ratio in a really high pixel density, so you can kind of crop it vertical or horizontal. Really great for content creators. It's got a lot of really good features. The last and most important feature is that this thing is old and you can find them used for really cheap. Like $500, I've been seeing them online, and these things can take a beating. I kind of ran mine over. Like, I was doing a music video and I was backing up a car, and it was a really expensive car, and I was really concerned about hitting something. Thought I was running over like a rock, but it was actually the leg of my gimbal, and this whole thing like got caught up against the tire, so the frame is bent and it's all scraped up. But all that to say is these things are hardy, and I think you'll have good luck getting one used. I think that's the biggest highlight, is the fact that this is so cheap and packs so many awesome features. The downsides of this camera is really just the fact that the autofocus is terrible and unusable. I really don't use the autofocus. I never did. So you're gonna be manually doing focus, which for most things you can make work, but you might miss some shots. You might not be able to do some tricks that you could do with a camera with amazing autofocus. So I'll put that aside. $500 for a used GH5 makes this feel a little daunting at like $1,500 to $1,800, depending on what sales they're running. But this is also a good camera. Unfortunately, it's not that much better than the GH5. See, I've been shooting on the GH5 for about 4 years. I got this about a year ago, and I was like, oh, this is gonna be so exciting. I'm in like a whole new world. And don't get me wrong, it's an improvement, but it's not like a 3X price jump improvement in picture quality. The more I got to use this, the more I appreciated the GH5. That being said, it does shine in some very particular ways. One, I think it looks super cool, which that might not be important to you. It's certainly not the biggest priority to me, but I love being like inspired by it. I think it's just like a cool camera that I want to go take and shoot things with it. I think that's really cool. Other thing is the autofocus is crazy, crazy, crazy good, which again, I can live without it, but there's some tricks and some shots that I would have never been able to grab, some really fast pullouts and push-ins that with the autofocus enabled is a huge, huge asset as far as the tool goes. The last, and I would say most important thing that is a real winner in this camera is the fact that the color is amazing. People have talked about like Sony color. I never really understood it until I got into color grading again, which I started doing when I got the GH5. This, you can make any shot look any way you want, as far as I'm concerned. This does it so much faster. Like some color wheels, a conversion LUT, and the shots I was getting were looking really amazing right out of the box. I didn't have to do much tweaking. Skin tones looked great. Everything just felt really good, like really fast. I didn't have to do a lot of work to make things look cool. The downsides of this camera are, again, the price is pretty steep, and then you're gonna get more expensive lenses where the Micro Four Thirds is gonna have tons of cheap lenses just out there on Craigslist and Facebook and stuff. So you're gonna spend a little bit more on everything. Batteries, all this stuff, it's a little pricey in the Sony universe. The other downside is the stabilization is not nearly as good as the GH5. I found that to be a little bit disappointing when I was pulling the shots when I first got it and editing them, and I was just like, oh, all these shots look super shaky. I've got the really wide lens for it, the Sigma 16, which helps kind of keep things looking stable, but ultimately it is not as good. That being said, there's gonna be a lot of other features and upsides and downsides to both of these, but I just wanna tell you my experience with them, tell you the story that like I started with a GH5. This is an amazing camera. Highly recommend it if you're just starting out. I upgraded to the FX30. This thing is really cool, don't get me wrong, but I kind of feel like you can do anything you would do on this on the GH5. I feel like if you want to go for something really big, then going for full frame, going for some other cameras, you can kind of get the next jump in quality. But if you're excited about the Sony Color and you want to jump into that universe, you can get full frame glass from it, so you can jump up to a bigger camera later on. I do think it's a good choice, and it works for a lot of people. Either way, you can't lose, but ultimately it's a camera, and you're gonna have to do a lot of lighting and lenses and all this other stuff to get the really cool shots you want. So hopefully you learned something. If you have any questions in the comments, I'm happy to answer. I appreciate you watching. I'll catch y'all on the next one.